From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here with Phil Gramm talking about his book, The Myth of American Inequality, How Government Biases Policy Debate. So to just pursue the political point for a second, I mean, it would seem to me that Democrats have an incentive not to include these programs into the figure. But Republicans, when they take power, why don't they change them? It doesn't mean you have to change the programs. It just means you have to more accurately count how the programs are counted.
Well, I tried to get the last administration interested in this. And the former OMB director had worked for me when he was a child. So I got him started on it, but this is the kind of nitty-gritty government that Democrats understand and they're committed to.
They're good at it.
And good at. And that Republicans don't spend the time to understand the significance of. My experience in government, my wife's experience in the belly of the beast in the public agency in the White House, was that Democrats love government and view it as a solution, and they learn it and they are committed to it. And Republicans don't like government, and they don't spend the time and effort to understand it. But look, the future is determined by our perception of the past. Figures may be dull, but they're critical in our understanding of the past and the present. And we are determining the future with data that is inaccurate. We find that when you count all transfer payments and taxes, income inequality is actually lower than it was in 1947. And yet we're having this huge debate about rebuilding the whole economy to deal with a crisis of inequality when the crisis doesn't exist.
Well, and so many tax policies, not just social programs, but tax policies are built on the premise that we have rampant inequality and therefore need to address it. And you end up with, I mean, my big problem with being so preoccupied with inequality is that the solutions, so-called, that we come up with actually make inequality worse.
Yeah, exactly.
And they slow the growth and they hurt the people who most need rapid economic growth in the bottom 50% of the population.
Well, we have a chapter on the super rich. And we address all the cliche challenges. But we make the point that life in America is not a zero-sum game, that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, but he didn't take anything away from anybody else. He created it. How am I poorer because he's richer? Warren Buffett made the country rich through our retirement programs with his investment genius. Why should I resent his income? I have retirement. He made my retirement more valuable. I don't understand this envy. I can understand it in a world where you've got people that are powerful and they take things that aren't theirs. But I don't understand it in a world where most people who are successful succeed by doing something that society wants done. Anyway, we address that in detail.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the child poverty figures, the argument goes that the child tax credit, which goes, I think, $2,000 now per child, phases out at a certain income level. I think the top is $150,000 now for a family, has in fact, reduced poverty and is a significant social program success. And you have Republicans, even like Marco Rubio and Mitt Romney, who say, you know what, we should make double that or even triple it to further reduce poverty and help families. What do you think of that?
Well, again, Democrats are not the only people that are misled by the official census numbers. The poverty rate before the pandemic was down to about 3%.
If you include these
If you
transfers.
include all the transfer payments and taxes.
Right.
So there is a hardcore poverty that is occurring in America that we're not reaching the way we're providing benefits. And I think we need to change the program to try to reach those people. But simply adding more money that goes to people that long since have not been poor is creating a problem where people won't work. I've pointed out over and over again that in 1965, 68% of the prime work-age people and the bottom 20% of income earners worked. It's now down to 36%. And with these benefits that have been provided during the pandemic, we're eroding the work effort among the second 20% of income earners and middle income earners. And the question is, who's going to pull the wagon when everybody's riding in it? And going back to the super rich, one thing we show is this political cliche that if we could only get more of their money, that we could fund all these things we need. And one of the things we show is you could take every penny they earn, and you'd run out of money in government very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's Margaret Thatcher said famously, problem with socialism is you soon run out of other people's money.
That's right.
There's one other sort of policy issue here, which may be a little technical, but is enormously significant for upward mobility. And you know Casey Mulligan, the University of Chicago economist, done some great work on the degree to which the income level phase-outs in these benefits create enormously high marginal tax rates. That's the tax rate on your next dollar of income for the people in the 30,000, 50,000, even 60,000 level, where if they make more, they actually are poorer because their benefits phase out, and they have to make a really big jump in income to overcome that. What's the solution from a policy point of view to that problem?
Let me say we analyze that in great detail in the book. The level of benefits that's being provided today is so generous that we shouldn't be shocked that people don't work when they can get as much not working as they could get working. But if we're going to deal with this problem, we've got to have a mandatory work requirement on means-tested programs. And we've got a perfect blueprint with the aid to families with dependent children welfare reform under President Clinton.
1996.
And we show in this book convincing evidence that it worked. It worked in that people got off welfare, they got jobs, and they're much better off, and they never came back, even though the work requirements have been largely suspended. If you look at unmarried women with dependent children, their level of well-being and their amount of benefits they get are lower because we provided incentive to get. Look, the economy is an elevator, and if you want to better yourself and your family, you do it in the marketplace. You do it in the private sector. And the tragedy, and we discuss this in great detail, the tragedy of America today is that we've got huge numbers of people who aren't working, so they're not acquiring skills. They're not part of the American economy. They're just attached. And then we've got failing schools. And I failed the 3rd, 7th, and 9th grades. I had a severe learning problem. I didn't learn to read until I was in the 10th grade. I still can't spell. But my father died in 1957. My mama got his GI insurance, and she sent me away to school with the $8,000. Changed my life. How many people in failing inner-city public schools are like me? My guess is a hell of a lot of them. And how people can oppose school choice, knowing they're going to look God in the face someday, I don't get it. I'd be very uncomfortable.
I know exactly what you mean. It is hard to believe when you confront the failures of American education, and particularly these inner-city public schools. So, Phil Gramm, I hope this enters your book, and the facts that it lays out enters the political debate here as we, not just in 2022, but going ahead in particular to 2024, so we can have a robust debate about this. So we haven't had this kind of debate about the role of these programs in quite some time. Again, the author of The Myth of American Inequality, How Government Biases Policy Debate by Phil Gramm, Robert Eklund, and John Early. Phil, thanks very much for being here, and best wishes to you on the success of this book.
Thank you, Paul.
Appreciate it. That's it for this edition of Potomac Watch. We're back, of course, every day with our commentary on this podcast, and we hope you'll join us tomorrow on another edition of Potomac Watch.